You're all going to love this next question. Would you mind talking to us about the anterior mid-cingulate cortex?
Sure. Doesn't that sound interesting?
Yeah. Right on the edge of your seats.
I'm impressed by your neuroscience knowledge there. The anterior mid-cingulate cortex, yes. So it's a part of the cortex, the outer part of your brain, the highly evolved human part of your brain. It's a little bit deeper down in there, but it's the part of the brain that tends to come online when we do really, really hard things. So if you take, they do this with little mice and labs and other animals where you can sort of stimulate that area of the brain, they're more willing to engage in hard work and do more things. If you lesion that part of the brain, people seem really unmotivated to do much of anything. And if you look at people who tend to lean into hard work a lot, so people who take on a new exercise program, over the course of literally a week, this part of your brain starts to grow in size. And so it's the part of the brain that sort of shows up when we need tenacity or grit or perseverance, words like that. There's an actual part of the brain, or it's a part of a network, but it's a very important hub in this network where if you have that part working and working hard, you seem to be more inclined to do hard work. And the reason is, by the way, if you want me to bore you a little more of this, is that effort center plugs right into your brain's reward centers. And so you start to connect the idea of hard work with reward. And so there's this central rewarding feedback loop. And it gets to be pretty addictive for some people, right? That's why when you start to overcome challenge, it's like, oh, I want more of that. There's a real sort of biological component to that, this thing that you mentioned. The mid-cingulate cortex, yeah.
It just rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, right?
I hear this a lot, and I think about it in my own life, that some of the parts of me that are the most interesting don't come from people thinking that I was going to do well in high school, that I was the smartest person in the room, that I had the most things figured out. It was because I was willing to take whatever was given and figure it out when other people wanted to quit, when other people wanted to fold, particularly in law school, where you're reading documents that are just like, you'd want to close the book and go to sleep, and you keep going despite this. And I remember taking, here's another fun one, taxation of corporation and shareholders, which was...
neuroscience sounds dry.
But I took that course with the mindset like, I want to learn these things because these are the things you hear about in the news. Like, oh, like this company moved this money and they managed to avoid taxes on this. Like, I wanted to understand that process, and I knew it was going to be boring, but I wanted to push myself in that regard so that I could understand that different side of the world. Would you mind describing more of like how people continue to do this in their life? Because it seems like there's benefits.
Yeah, what you're talking about there. So when I start talking with somebody about the subject of mental performance, there's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of, basic foundational things around sleep and how you fuel and other things. These things all ladder up to mental performance, but there are a certain suite of mental performance skills that can be trained and cultivated that can be really, really useful for not just athletes, but for everybody. And number one on that list is curiosity. And that's what you just described, right? It's, I want to know why, right? So I think it's probably why you're a good podcast host too, because you have a general inkling towards curiosity. It correlates to all kinds of success metrics. And here's the interesting thing about curiosity. It is running all through kids, right? Every kid's favorite question, if you have ever had a 4-year-old, why? Why? Curiosity is the software that runs on this change machine called your brain. That only works until you get to be about 25 years old. And this magical window of neuroplasticity really starts to shut down, and we stop being curious. And I always joke with people like, tell me your favorite music. And the answer you invariably get is, well, it's the stuff that I was listening to in high school or when I was maybe in my early 20s. And since then, all music is shit. Why? Because we stop being curious about other things, right? We kind of get set in our ways. We hear this. It is a lack of curiosity. So curiosity sort of goes from this thing that we had hardwired when we were younger into something that becomes less and less a part of our everyday life. It's not that it's lost beyond the age of 25. You're over 25. And are you over 25?
I'm 28.
Okay.
Okay,
It's hard to tell. You got a young face, and I've never asked you.
if I'm being really honest, when I turned 25, every day I told Rebecca, like, my neuroplasticity is going down. This is it for me. Podcast is done. I did it so often, it became a terrible joke.
But what you're talking about is the upside of it. It has to become a practice. And a podcast is a great way to practice curiosity because you have to ask good questions, which is curiosity. So that's the foundational mental performance skill. It can be cultivated even beyond the age of 25. You just have to start getting really curious with certain things about how you operate, how other people operate. Ask more questions, ask better questions. That's what relationships are built on. It's not just what makes a good podcast, it's what makes a good relationship. And it can be done. We just have to be a little bit more intentional about it.